I was,
Good evening, everybody. I'm Steve Rabinowitz. That is Joe Tufaro. That is Anthony Strait. And that is Jay Kaplan. Jay, you got some words for us to start off this evening.
yeah. As someone who, when I'm in the office, was in that neighborhood, it's not far from my company's offices. I just kind of wanted to extend my condolences to the family and friends of the people who died in the shooting this past Monday at the Midtown Manhattan building where the NFL's headquarters are located. NYPD officer Didarul Islam, Wesley LePatner, an executive at Blackstone Investment Management Firm, Julia Hyman, an associate at the real estate firm Rudin Management, and Alain Etienne, who was a security guard at the building. Craig Clementi, an NFL employee, was injured in the shooting. The gunman's target was the NFL's offices, according to the note found on him in the aftermath of the attack, which ended with him taking his own life. But he got off on the wrong floor. His issue was apparently with how the NFL has, or has not, in his estimation, handled the issue of CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a degenerative condition tied to repeated head trauma that doctors cannot definitively diagnose while a person is alive. It took a lawsuit by almost 5,000 former players in 2011 for the NFL to even start providing benefits to retired NFL players and their families, including baseline testing plus an uncapped compensation fund for those suffering from conditions such as dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or ALS. But according to a 2024 report by the Washington Post, they've denied more claims than they've approved. CTE is a serious issue, and I agree with the shooter that the NFL has not done enough to help those doing the research, nor the retired players who were shown to have been victims of CTE when their brains were autopsied after they passed away. But trying to shoot up their offices is not the way to tell the NFL they need to do better on the issue of CTE.
Well said. This is the On the Sports Lines Training Camp edition. Joe Tufaro is here. He's my partner on the Official Review podcast. We'll be doing some episodes for that coming up next month. We are back to talking about that thing that you do with the pigskin getting thrown, touchdowns, all of that stuff. Starting with the Hall of Fame game, which will be tomorrow night. Football is about to be truly king again, and we'll talk Giants, Jets, the training camps we're looking forward to, and of course, the WNBA. Don't worry, Joe, we'll let you go before then.
Thanks.
Probably not the topic you all expected to be in the number 4 spot this evening. As we get ready for a busy fall, please keep us entertained before then. It's youtube.com/on the sports lines and facebook.com/on the sports lines is where you can subscribe and comment on our videos and get us to September 4th when the NFL season actually begins. Our annual look of the two co-tenants of MetLife Stadium begins with the New York Football Giants, who ended their 2024 season 3-14. The consequences didn't come in the form of the jobs of Brian Daboll, head coach, and general manager Joe Shane. Although, guys, it's not the weather that's making you feel hot, even though it's 96 degrees. It's the seat you are currently on that's heating up. The consequences did come in an all new QB room that we'll see in 2025. Now, for the Giants, was 3-14 truly the bottom for this regime? God, I hope so. Or is the worst yet to come? Let's talk about it through 3 training camp questions that Joe will answer, and hopefully we'll get to talk a more amount than we will because he's the expert about this stuff and we are merely peasants. Jay, first.
The Giants, as the rabbi alluded to, the Giants completely remade their quarterback room in the offseason, bringing in veteran free agents Russell Wilson, late of my Steelers, Jameis Winston, and trading up into the back end of the first round to draft Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. Tommy DeVito is the only holdover, and as the fourth arm in camp, his roster spot is not guaranteed. Wilson has been anointed QB1. Winston is clearly QB2, which theoretically should give Dart something most rookie quarterbacks drafted in the first round don't get in the NFL: actual time to develop. As much as the fans may be clamoring for Dart, the QB pecking order seems to have been determined. So, Joe, what should we be watching for from each of the top 3 quarterbacks during training camp and then once the preseason games begin on August 9th against Buffalo?
Yeah, it's it's funny. First of all, I echo your thoughts. I was in New York last week and just left the day before all that happened. So kind of odd to be again walking around that part of town and then hear what's going on. So anyway, Yeah, the Giants, it's funny how perception changes, right? Daniel Jones was never highly thought of when he first got drafted. People thought he shouldn't have gone as high as he did. And now Jackson Dart's, everybody's all over him. Every throw he makes in practice, and oh, we can't wait. He's gonna starting before you know it. And you're like, yeah, just calm down. Like you said, we have a plan in place that seems solid.
Mhm.
Um, they do have the toughest schedule in the
Yeah.
history of the NFL to start out with. So that's going to determine a lot as well. And I think a lot of people think that if Russell Wilson starts at quarterback and goes 0 and 5 or 0 and 6 because of the teams they're playing against, that they're automatically just going to make the change and he's going to walk in and
Right.
walk on water and skip over Jameis. And
Right.
probably not going to happen.
No.
The long-term plan and the way they would like to see this go is for Russell to play very well this year, to open up the offense a little bit more, use that moon ball of his to get some guys deep and over the top. And then again, if something does happen to him because he's getting older, maybe we throw Jameis in there to, clean up. Or as Jameis always says, I get to bring the ball down the field and they bring in some kid from Utah to score the touchdown for me. But which is the greatest line of ever.
Uh,
Um, but it's interesting because again, the plan is to play Russell Wilson, and then I guess the real question comes up when we're talking about this at the end of the year. If they get to the playoffs or if they get to 9 wins, what do you do? Does he play next year? Do you trade one of them because they'll be worth something? And then just bring in Jackson Dart or whatever. But it's obvious that they have a short-term plan and a long-term plan to kind of save their bacon as they go. And then, we'll talk about the rest of the team as we go. But that's the plan at quarterback. Tommy's there to show them around, to tell them to go get chicken cutlets and meatball sandwiches and
right.
around New Jersey. And that's the only reason he's there. And he'll be on the practice squad, which will be good. So.
Joe, you honestly think they'll stash DeVito on the practice squad? They haven't been prone to carrying 4 arms during the regular season across, the all the available slots.
Yeah, it'll depend because, who's ever number three gets to hang out. So he doesn't have to, because he doesn't have to be active, whoever the third quarterback is. So, he'll probably, I don't know what else you do with him. I think they like the fact, again, he knows the building, he knows things. He's probably a coach in waiting because he certainly isn't a starting quarterback in waiting. Um,
Well, there's
but,
history with giant backup quarterbacks becoming quarterback coaches.
Yeah, and he did, he was good at Syracuse, and it's not like he came from nothing. So, we didn't know who he was when he first started. Everybody made such a big deal about him being from nowhere. He played at Syracuse. It's not like he was some bum. So if he winds up learning a little bit more and then maybe getting a coaching job at a college somewhere as a quarterback's coach or an offensive coordinator, that's probably his best path to success.
Gotcha.
I don't think, and he can still live at home. So, so I don't know.
You're a New
I'm not
Jersey
sure what
boy
his,
at heart.
yeah, I'm not sure what his thought process is or what he's going to be because, he never thought he was going to be in this position for
Right.
sure. From the last 2 years where he was actually starting for them. Um, and I don't know if anybody's seen his agent lately. But we'll see how all that goes for him. So,
All right.
again, I'm not sure, Jay, I agree with you. There's probably not much to do with him, but I don't think you just let him walk away either. I think you kind of give him something to do, whether it's running the scout team on the practice squad and, doing something, but you got to get Dart some reps and you got to get Jameis Winston reps. It's not an easy thing to do when you got three quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So we'll see where it goes.
Yep.
Do you think this was the plan kind of going into like February and March to kind of have like this Eddie quarterback who's like a first round talent being backed up and pretty much doing everything it possibly can not to play this season?
I think I think once Shador turned out to be Shador Sanders, and Anthony will talk about this later, but I think once he turned out to be what we all thought he was going to be, and that the first guys were going to go where the first guy was going to go where they were, they figured that they could get somebody like Jackson Dart and so did we all.
Mhm.
Figured they could get him somewhere 20, 25, 26 because of who needed a quarterback and trades and all that stuff. And, we called that right on draft night. And I just think that that was their plan was we know we're not getting, the top guy. So let's see where we can go. And having Russell be available was golden. And, and don't forget, they signed Jameis first. But Jameis is only making $1 million a year. It's sort of like, even if he just got coffee for everybody, it's worth it. It's not, again, he's great to have a backup. It's great to have somebody with his knowledge on the team. Again, he's a little bit, they talked to Dayball about him the other day, and they said, yeah, he's extremely aggressive. And, he doesn't really care if there's somebody there. He believes that he can make every throw. And he probably can't at this point, and he probably never could make some of the throws he thought he could make. And that's why he got himself in trouble. But his energy, his attitude, the whole thing is really good for that team. And you could see that he can still help teach guys. That's what he's there for. And I think he knows that too. He thinks he's lucky to be there. He's living in New York. He's having a good time. The fans love him. The team loves him. So again, you're the backup. And you know that that's what it's going to be, even if it's mop-up duty or if it's just giving Russell a break from running around somewhere. But Jameis can run too at this point. He showed it in training camp a little bit. So maybe you do have a couple of packages where you throw him in there and, change it up a little bit as we're going through our stretch of first 6 or 8 games.
Yeah, and the fact I like the fact that you bring in a pair of 30 plus something veterans who have all of this time in the league and all this knowledge, and it automatically takes all of the pressure off of Dart to have to do anything this year, as much as the fan base may want otherwise. He's the shiny new toy for a team that's been looking for its next franchise quarterback since Sims retired. But the fact is, and I've been a proponent of this, you guys have heard me say it time and again, it makes no sense to throw a rookie quarterback, especially one coming out of Lane Kiffin's system, which does not really translate to the NFL. It's better. There could not be a better situation for Jackson Dart to have been landed in. He's behind 2 veterans. There is no pressure on him. It is a redshirt year. And honestly, Giant fans, down the road, y'all will be happy that that's how this played out. If it is allowed to play out this way.
Yeah, and just the fact of learning how to be a professional. Like they always, I thought, we talked about this years ago. We've been doing the show a long time. We talked about this years ago with OBJ, where he followed Eli around one year because he said, I want to be like Eli. And Eli's always the first one here, and I want to see what it's like. He went home with him, saw about, how he drove all the way back to Long Island and then came back the next morning, but he was always the first one there. And it's like, yeah, you can be the first one there, but are you doing anything?
Right.
Like, if you're just the first one there and you're sitting around drinking a soda, flipping through your playbook, you're not really doing anything. So he's learning from somebody like Russell Wilson. He's learning from somebody like Jameis Winston. He's learning even from Tommy DeVito of, hey, this is what this is. Use this time wisely. Use it for what you're supposed to be doing. But it's good that everybody sees you when they're going home, that you're still there doing something and improving yourself. You're not playing video games like some of the quarterbacks in the league. All those things are important to learn right away of how to be a professional. And it seems like everybody in the locker room loves him. It seems like neighbors likes him. Not to the point where, oh, he should be playing, because they all respect Russell Wilson. And like you said, that's why it's good to bring in a guy who in this league has some respect. A little different than the guy on your team, but I'm sure we'll talk plenty about that later.
Let's move on to
spoilers alerts from Joe Tufaro tonight.
Spoiler alert. Yeah.
Let's move on to Anthony talking about the rest of the offense.
But before you move on, I do have something about Jameis Winston. My niece to be a bit of an ass sometimes. She actually asked me the other day, since Jameis Wilson's playing in New York, who's going to take him to City Island to get some good crab legs? Because we all know about
I volunteer.
No, DeVito definitely wouldn't know about the crab legs.
No, I'll take Jameson. I'm the Bronx boy. I'll take Jameis if he wants to go to City Island.
Okay, Joe. Well, I think you and I will both agree. The only really sure thing in this Giants offense is Malik Nabers. We know he's going to be option A, B, C, maybe D, E, F, G on the Giants offense. But uh, but in your opinion, which other offensive player needs to have a good showing in the training camp to at least give the coaching staff something to look forward to as far as game film, maybe position battles, or maybe someone who could be a dark horse and maybe make the final 53-man roster?
Yeah, I think the guy, and I'm going to pull a little rabbi here. I'm going to pick two guys. Because the one on defense that Jay's going to ask me is obvious. So the offensive guy that has to really show something this year is going to be Jalen Hyatt. Has
Yeah.
got to show up and improve himself, show himself to have that speed guy. Now, everybody blamed Daniel Jones for Hyatt not being able to use his speed on certain things. So that's not going to be a problem with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson can get him the ball. Russell Wilson can overthrow him and see where it goes. So I think that Hyatt really needs to step up because they've got a couple other guys in. They got this kid from Notre Dame that's showing up all of a sudden that was undrafted, who's having a great camp. They have a couple of tight ends that are playing very, very well with Bellinger and Theo Johnson. Scatterbo's catching the ball out of the backfield. Wan'Dale Robinson is healthy, hopefully, and continues to go. And then you got Neighbors and you got. So I think that Hyatt needs to find his place on this team, whether it's as a kick returner or as the other wide receiver. He really has to show up and make his presence as okay. This is my third year. We've had different quarterbacks. We've had the same coordinator. We've had the same quarterback coach. We've had the same. So he really needs to show that he was worth that pick that we took him on at 13, I guess it was. And then, really step up and show that he's the other guy. The other part of this that I think, Evan Neal, you could talk about all day long, but I think somebody at center has to step up and show that they can play center. John Michael Smith, they said he took a little bit of a step back. He didn't seem like he was all that great last year. They have Van Rotten in camp, and they've been kind of splitting, actually rep to rep. They've been splitting. They've been switching them in and out to see who it is. And you want to get that offensive line settled and playing together as quickly as possible. So one of those two guys, either JMS or Van Rotten, have to step up to be the center of that group. And I think those are the two guys that have to have a good training camp. I think Scatterbo's and the other guy are going to be unbelievable in the backfield. I just think that they're going to complement each other. They have somebody playing fullback in front of Scatterbo that's going to break him some stuff. And they said he has fantastic hands that I guess he really didn't use in Arizona at Arizona State. So I think he's just going to be a breath of fresh air. And again, having a tandem at running back is going to be very, very helpful. And then having a quarterback that can read defenses will certainly go a long way.
Yeah,
So,
I definitely agree with you with all those because I feel like, and I said this on draft night. I thought Scatterbo, if the Giants were to get him, would be a great fit. Like Tyler Trace in the backfield. But yeah, this offensive line skills to the hell out of me right now because it shows how far we have gone from the suburban nights of the '80s and even the Bob Olds-led offensive line teams in the '90s, and even the dirty old man from the 2007 to '08 Giant teams that was so good. This offensive line and every nail switching from tackle to guard, kind of to throw things into that. It's like this all, regardless of what weapons you have, the offensive line, if it's so unstable and can't block, or just no continuity as we've seen the last few years, I don't know. This offense can't go anywhere. And I always thought that was one of the biggest problems with the Giants. This line, just there's no stability or continuity deal.
Yeah, no, and I think moving Neal inside, if you've noticed, he's been talking a lot during camp. He seems to be a lot more confident. He seems to be a little bit more comfortable. He's in a smaller space.
Yep.
Like Dable said the other day, you're always out on an island as a tackle. So if you get beat, you get beat. When you're inside, you do have somebody there, and of course you're going to have to work with all the games and all the stuff, but I think it makes him a little bit more confident to have somebody right there. And again, the guy he's blocking is usually going to be standing right in front of him. And it's immediate instead of this backing up and trying to get an angle and trying to get your feet set. And, again, it's a different world from college, as we've always talked about. Um,
It's between an
Jay
island and
and
a
I
phone
bring
booth,
that
right
up
now.
100 times, but it's, you're much better off. So again, I agree with you. That's the entire, but we do this every year with every team, right? Even Kansas City, who has the greatest quarterback in the world, loses games because their offensive line at times is awful,
Yeah.
or their scheme isn't right, or whatever it is. So, changing up coaches a couple of years ago, bringing in some new guys, making some adjustments on things. We'll see where it goes. I agree with you 1,000%. If you can't block for somebody, doesn't matter who you got back there. You could have Jim Brown and Walter Payton back there. If you don't have an offensive line, it doesn't matter. So, um, but again, for somebody who needs to really step up, which was the question. I think fun to watch, but to see what happens with the Jalen Hyatt, and then I think the center on this team has to be determined pretty quickly and be very strong. So
I feel like Evan Neal is now in the final step of purgatory because he's just gone down every single year, and guard is pretty much the last spot you get before you're basically on the street.
before you're
So
playing for some other team, yeah. So
Hmm.
I don't know if any other team would want the services of Evan
oh,
Neal
we
the way
didn't
that
think
they do.
anybody would want Eric Flowers either, but he turned out to be okay. So
That's life. Okay, looking at the defensive side of the ball, the defensive line is going to be stellar. Preseason PFF ranked number 3 in the entire National Football League with Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, and the new guy Abdul Carter picked number 3 in the draft. The secondary work in progress and is one of the reasons why this defense may not be able to get to the heights that they will. It's pretty much get to the quarterback or bust. So, as Shane Bowen is in year number 2, and if things happen possibly last year as defensive coordinator, who on the defense needs to step up? Because this team is probably going to win more games 21-17 than they're going to win games 35-35,
yeah,
35-31.
I think I think this is an obvious choice. It's Tay Banks has to show that
Oh
he can
yeah.
play cornerback, and he's going to be the other guy on the other side. Because bringing in the safeties, they brought in the guy from Miami, Javon Holland, and all these guys. They've shored up what they had to shore up and what they could, with losing guys to free agency and stuff. They did a nice job of rebuilding the back end of it. Like you said, the front four is unbelievable. Linebackers are very good, but Tay Banks has to prove that he can play one-on-one, that he can not just pull guys down when he gets beat or look completely lost. He doesn't know how to tackle or anything like that. So, I think Drew Phillips is going to be very good in his second year as a nickel guy. And then, like I said, you brought in the centers from free agency. I think that part is actually better than people think, but he has to prove that he can be that other guy, or you got to find somebody, or it's going to be Cordell Flott, and who didn't play horribly, but that's not the top echelon guy that you want back there. And again, I don't know if there's going to be somebody. There's a couple of guys out there that might get cut, at the end of training camp. There's a couple of veterans out there that guys probably would don't want to pay at this point, and they might be able to pick somebody up if it turns out he can't. But he just has problems turning in his head. He's just not used to playing that kind of defense where he's comfortable enough. I used to play that position very poorly before I found out I was a linebacker. And my problem was the same thing. When you turn your head, you stop moving your feet. And all of a sudden, the ball's going over your head, and you're like, oh, I thought I was in the right spot. And the guy's 3 yards behind you. And that's not a very good feeling. So, I think that's his weak point. I think everybody knows that. I think they've tried to work with him as much as they can on it. But if he doesn't come around, they're going to have to replace him. And again, I think you're looking at the waiver wire, trying to find some veterans to bring in, maybe some ungiant guys that you really don't want to bring in. But they have to do something because that's the only weak point on that defense. That's obvious. That's why I saw the question. I was like, oh, that's too simple. It's got to be him. He's the one who has to step up and show that he can play.
Joe, every now and then we give you a Captain Obvious question. I mean, they don't all have to be, force you
Well,
to dig
it's
deep.
because you forced me to talk about the other team, which I
Well,
know
yeah,
nothing about. So
that's why we give you one that's going to be an easy one. We're
yeah,
setting you up. Here's my thing about Banks, Joe, and tell me if you agree on this part. Not only does he need a technique adjustment, he needs an attitude adjustment because his body language last year during certain games to any previous other old school regimes the Giants have had, he wouldn't have been able to play for those guys. They would have kicked him to the curb a long time ago.
yeah. No. Now, it's funny because, certain guys in the media you listen to and certain guys you don't because they just talk, right?
Mhm.
But Carl Banks, as hard as he is to listen to sometimes, um, he's very honest about it. And he calls him out in the middle of the game. And
Yeah,
Rabbi knows I do the same thing. I listen to the game instead of watching the guys on TV. I usually listen to the Giants announcers. And he has no problem calling him out for his attitude, for poor tackling, for not being aware of stuff, not being on the field the right times. And, maybe maybe he's a guy that came from a big program that was successful and he's not used to losing and he doesn't like to be on a losing team. And I get it. He may be a change of scenery guy
maybe.
sooner or later, but I think, maybe we'll go to Kansas City, like everybody else does for a year. No, I think that's his thing that he has to get over. And like you said,
Yeah,
there really hasn't been a leader on that defense that could take him aside. Um, Again, we'll all go back to the 80s when we talk about leaders, but you don't have a guy like that. But maybe with that front line, someone can get through to him and say, hey, we need you to step up. Or again, these guys that they brought in, the free agents, the safeties, Holland and those guys, maybe they have enough gravitas to walk over to him and put their arm around him and get him to play a little bit better and get his attitude up. But it's tough when you're the one getting picked on all the time, right? And you're getting picked on by everybody, by the other team, by your team, by the media, by the fans. They all know who the weak point is on this team. And that can't be easy on your, psyche as you try to get through life in the NFL. So
Mhm.
hopefully they have somebody back there that can kind of take them under their wing. And I agree with you, though. He looks like he either doesn't want to be there or he doesn't know what he's doing. And again, maybe he's the change of scenery guy down the line. Well, he'll actually be good, but he really needs to prove this year that he can play. Otherwise, he'll be gone.
Yep.
And like you said, Flott's not awful. I would rather have Flott given his all and playing than having this guy given 50% and walking off the field. So
Agreed.
I think you said it perfectly, and this is not going to be the same safety cornerback room now that we'll see in week 1 or even in week 8 or even in week 10. So it's going to be a lot of difference throughout the year. Now let's go on to the other side of the ball, Joe's favorite topic. Now, while the Giants didn't make wholesale changes this season, the New York Jets did some spring cleaning to the organization. I love spring cleaning. Aaron Rodgers out of the quarterback room and on to Pittsburgh. Check. We'll get into that in a moment. New coach Aaron Glenn. Double check. Darren Muji is the new GM. Triple check. And while 5-12 to their first playoff berth in over a decade and a half doesn't seem feasible in a stronger conference,
right.
Stranger things have happened. I can win the lottery this year, and the road to respectability might be there for Gangrene. Now, let's expect some more answers to the same 3 questions for Joe. We're boring. We're not really changing it up when we talk over Giants to Jets. Jay, talk about the quarterback room.
Yeah, as you said, Rabbi, like the team they share a MetLife Stadium address with, the Jets also remade their quarterback room in the offseason. Giants get a former Steeler quarterback. So do the Jets as they signed free agent Justin Fields to be their number 1 quarterback. And they brought in 2 undrafted free agents in Adrian Martinez and Brady Cook to join veteran holdover Tyrod Taylor, who is clearly quarterback 2. The focus of camp will clearly be on developing Fields into a legitimate NFL starting quarterback and being able to take snaps from Josh Myers, his former Ohio State center, and throw to his former number 1 receiver at Ohio State in the newly extended Garrett Wilson. Gives him a nice level of comfort as he starts this new chapter of his career. Joe, with all that as lead up, what should we be watching for from the Jets quarterbacks during training camp and then once the preseason games begin for them on August 9th against Green Bay?
Well, unfortunately, and I'll tell you, I'll give you my overall thought on this, and you guys will be shocked by this. I do like Aaron Glenn. I think he's got a chance to be good. I think he understands it. I like ex-players as coaches. I think but he's been a coach in the league for a while up in Detroit. I think he knows how to coach. I think he understands what a head coach is, not just a coordinator turned head coach that just goes back and stays a coordinator, like many of these new coaches do. So I think he gives them a legitimate shot to be legitimate, to tell the owner, get out of here, go back to Ireland, do something because I'm running this team my way. You hired me to do this, you know. And again, bringing the GM and the coach in at the same time is a good idea.
Yep.
Because, the other guy had his legs cut out from under him by the owner a number of times, with the whole situation even with cutting Aaron Rod, trading Aaron Rod or whatever the hell they did. That whole thing was a disaster and they needed to go. But it wasn't really their fault that they had to go. The GM's fault. Douglas did a good job. It's the owner getting too involved with things. So hopefully these guys can kind of keep him at bay a little bit. Again, Woody just wants to be able to go out to the Hamptons and have people pat him on the back for having a winning team. He hates to have everybody take him aside and tell him what's wrong with his team and what he needs to do. And I don't blame him because it wouldn't be fun for owning a team if they stink. But that's what he's got, and that's what he's living with, and he's got to just get out of their way, just like the guys in Washington did, just like all the other bad owners. They got to get out of the way. Jerry?
And it helps that Glenn played for the Jets and was a really good player for the Jets. But, I mean, Joe, he's bringing in a brand new first-time offensive coordinator who's got to essentially try and turn Justin Fields, take him to the next level of his development that kind of started last season in Pittsburgh and then got, kind of cut off when Wilson came back. So what do the Jets do to get to get Fields to that next level?
Hopefully he stays healthy because that was the biggest scare in New York.
Right.
Forget about
injury.
Forget about anything else. If he had gone down with an injury in the first week, and you're looking at Tyrod Taylor and Adrian Martinez, it would have been over pretty early. Even Rich Eisen might have said they don't have a chance to win the Super Bowl. And again, they have. I think he takes a lot of that pressure off. I think all those talking head guys like Aaron Glenn, I think that they respect him, like you said, because he was a decent player here and he understands the whole Jet thing, that they are the little brother and that they try too hard sometimes. But I agree with you. They have to figure out what Justin Fields is. Is he just a running quarterback? Can he throw the ball? Can he read defenses? Again, I think, and Jay, you're the expert on this, but I've always thought he pulled it down way too early all the time in Chicago. And
definitely
again,
in Chicago.
And again, I don't know how good their offensive line is going to be because they have a worse problem. At times they've had a worse problem than even the Giants have had. And again, you look at, they have two really good guys in there in Vera Tucker and Tippmann, but there's no depth on this team. Again, you look at the depth chart, which I'm looking at from ESPN, and there's just like two guys at every position. And then there's a bunch of dashes, which means there's no backup at all.
Right.
There's no backup left tackle listed on the depth chart at all. Zero. None of them. It's Carter Warren and then 3 dashes. And that's it. So how do you go into an NFL season without a backup left tackle? It almost doesn't make sense, right? And Hartwig's on IR already. So, they have to really develop an offense, like you said. Now, they have a fantastic running back in Breece Hall. They have a fantastic wide receiver. Yeah. They have
Braylon Allen as well. And
yeah, he's hurt now too.
He's going to lean into that, which is, we all know, takes a bit of the pressure off of a young quarterback who's still really learning how to play the game at the NFL level.
No, and you got Garrett Wilson who can catch anything, so he doesn't really have to be accurate. And hopefully Lazard is over Aaron Rodgers leaving, and
I think Josh Reynolds will have an impact.
So, but again, you start to look through those groups and you go, okay, Braylon Allen's out at this point, and he hopefully he comes back, and healthy enough. But we all know how injuries work. Some guys just get slowed down for a couple of weeks and then it kind of screws up your whole offense. So, but Justin Fields, they have to figure out what he is and they got to figure out what he does well. And they have to, and again, it's difficult. You got a brand new coordinator, so you're starting from fresh, you're starting with new words, starting with new signals, meaning everybody's starting with that, and meaning the receivers and the running backs and the offensive line is all starting with something new, and that doesn't always work great in the beginning. But I think again, they better hope he's healthy enough because he's going to need all the time he can get, and he's probably not going to play in preseason. I'm sure Tyrod will get most of the things, and Adrian will play a quarter here and there, but I don't think he's going to play that much because, it's only 3 games and you're scared to get everybody hurt.
Yeah.
But again, this little scare of him dislocating his toe or whatever he did, that's not good, because, and we're going to talk about that with some other teams later. That just puts you back. And that in this, again, the fact that the Hall of Fame game is tomorrow, for God's sakes, you're looking at this going, if you get backed up for a week because your starting quarterback can't play, that's a ton of time.
Yeah.
A week is forever in the NFL in preseason now, in training camp. They're only there for 3 weeks, for God's sakes. It's like, this is it. And if you miss a week, if you miss 10 days of a brand new system, you can sit in the room all you want and learn it, but if you can't pull it off and you can't work with these guys, it was my biggest pet peeve about Aaron Rodgers not showing up, right? Was, hey, you're on a brand new team. You might want to at least introduce yourself to some guys and see what they can do. See how fast they are. See what routes they run. Do they know how to do them the way you want it, right? And all Aaron did last year was complain about his wide receivers running the wrong route. He's supposed to be on the line. He's supposed to be on the numbers, and he's not there. And
A
you're
lot
like,
of the
well,
times
maybe
during
you
the
showed up.
game.
You know,
A lot of the times during the game.
But here's the thing, Rabbi. A lot of that, what and Jets fans complained about it last year about how it was during the game. But here's the thing: the way you prevent that from happening during week 5 is by actually being there in the install periods, in the OTAs, in the beginning of training camp, so that even if you're not going to play in the preseason games, you at least have all of that practice time to work on that stuff. And if you're not there to help these guys to get them to do it the way you want it done, that's what you get in week 5.
Right. And you don't want to have to correct it in week 5. You want to be able to correct it. Like you said, even standing on the sideline, you can correct it and say, hey, on that thing, the reason that you missed that throw was because he's supposed to be on the numbers and he's not. And then you get to talk to those guys. But if you don't bother to go, then that's it. But again, that's your problem now.
Guys, we'll talk about that in a second.
Doing that.
We'll talk about that later.
Yep.
Poor Anthony's cat has gotten about as much time talking tonight on the show as Anthony has. So Anthony, let's talk about the new offense that the new Lions offensive coordinator Tanner Engstrand will be taking over with the Jets.
Yeah, all this talk about Jets training camp, it brings me 5 memories of Howard University and watching the players scattered about the north and south side of campus and looking completely lost to get to the student center. But anyway, Joe, it's pretty much the same question I asked you about the Giants. Which offensive player you got your eye on as far as who needs to step up in camp, who can leave a good impression as far as coaching, and who has a good outside shot of making the final roster?
Yeah, I think it's that same. I think I'm going to make this one quick because we have been talking too much about them as it is. I just think I think the answer to the question of who has to step up, who has to have a big camp, which was what the question was, and it has to be Justin Fields. He has to take control of it. He has to learn the system. He has to make the coach comfortable enough that he knows he can call things that he did. I mean, this guy's coming from an offense that ran every play in the world, like every trick play, he's coming from a very, very strong space, and he's going to and he has a brand new guy to teach it to, and he doesn't know if he's capable of learning. Like, we don't really know if Justin Fields is capable of learning an offense because he was thrown to the Wolves in Chicago and he was terrible, and then got run out of town, and then he went to Pittsburgh, and they didn't really, use him that much, or didn't want him, or he didn't. Again, he didn't want to be there either because he's behind Russell Wilson and is, getting talked about with all these other guys. So he has to stand up and say, I'm the quarterback. I'm the number one quarterback. I know what I'm doing, and get comfortable. We always used to talk about Drew Brees and we used to talk about Peyton, and Sean Payton and those guys could probably order off the menu in two different restaurants and know what the other guy was going to have because they they thought the same. And you need to get that kind of thing going between coaches and players, and especially with quarterbacks. And I think that the best thing that Russell Wilson has said so far about Brian Dable is he thinks like a quarterback. He understands the game like a quarterback. He knows how to call plays. He knows what he's trying to get across to you. And that you need that kind of relationship, whether it's with the offense coordinator or the head coach. And I think Justin Fields has to prove he can do that and can learn an offense and can run it efficiently and not just run it like it's been run in New York for a while for the Jets, which is just helter skelter and do whatever you can do. The Zach Wilson years of run around like a nut and throw it down the field. And that can't happen if you really want to have a success. So I think on offense, he's the guy that has to show that he's the real deal and that they didn't waste a year bringing him in.
Okay, so let's talk about the Jets defense for a quick second.
Can
It's not terrible, by the way. They had a lot of hype going into the beginning of 2024. Ended up with the third best defense in terms of yards allowed in the NFL. And now we were talking about how the Jets had a new offensive coordinator. Although the defensive coordinator didn't coach in football in 2024, and Steve Wilkes, the last time he was a defensive coordinator, he was the defensive coordinator for the Super Bowl runner-up that got into overtime in the 49ers. I feel like Wilkes, by the way, is the biggest scapegoat in the history of the NFL.
Oh my God.
Gets fired in his first season, was done wrong in Carolina, gets fired by the 49ers after making the Super Bowl. So on the defensive side for the Jets, who do you think needs to step up here?
Well, you could say somebody like Sauce Gardner, who had a very, very down year, and
a new contract to go with it, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Same with Garrett Wilson.
So you kind of go, all right, is he really that good? Is he not that good? I don't think he needs to prove too much, but it would be nice that if you're going to count on him to be the lockdown guy of the world, that he can actually play that way. He's kind of lost favor, and it's funny talking about it from the referee side. He started to take a lot of penalties, and I don't think he holds any more than Darrelle Revis did, but he's getting called for it, and that's something that's very strange, right? When you're that good and you're supposed to be the hype guy, you're supposed to be locked down. Usually you don't see too many flags. They let you get away with some stuff. And again, nobody held more than Revis did. But Sauce Gardner is now starting to get called for a lot of penalties, taking a lot of bad things. He's another one that doesn't want to tackle anybody, kind of runs the other way when somebody's coming. It's kind of fun to watch when you watch it slow on film that he turns his back on running backs and runs the other direction, like the guy gave him the best move in the world. But, they did lose his linebackers. They did lose a couple of people. Again, the nice thing that they've done is they've built up a little bit of depth on their defense so that you can rotate some guys in. You can't keep, as we know, you can't keep Quinnen Williams in there all day. You're going to have somebody give him a blow every now and then. So they've actually got some guys now on defense. They've got good players. They're a little short still in linebacker. But I would say he needs to prove that you can just leave him alone over there and then play the rest of your defense. And so that would be my pick.
And the funny thing is,
actually, my pick is nobody, because if you see, I wrote nothing in.
You can put nothing in there. That's perfectly fine. You said something without saying nothing. What's interesting is the fact that Gardner is going to be assigned in this new scheme the number one wide receiver a lot more in 2025, which could be a hindrance to how good he thinks he is and how good we think he is, or could be a help and could at least neutralize teams. Although a lot of the teams in this division, Bills, Dolphins, Patriots, don't have a clear one, or they have a clear 1 and 2. So you have a lot of that. So it's going to be interesting to see how the defense goes for the Jets this year. But what's also interesting, before we let you go tonight, Joe, is everything else around the National Football League. Training camps are interesting to us. And for most of us, we're simple men. We see new quarterbacks under center we like. Well, almost all of us. Joe, you're going to go first. And as usual, you're a rebel and you're completely different from the rest of us because the Rams actually kept their quarterback after a lot of talk, and Matthew Stafford and what I think is a pretty solid playoff contender of the Rams now have a good thing going right now.
Yeah, I think what the Rams did here, and again, this all depends on how bad the news is that his back is bad, because backs are not good, right? If he has a bad back, that's not going away, and that's career ending, and that's not going to be comfortable. And you never know when he's going to take a big hit or if he's going to just get twisted the wrong way or whatever it is. So that caveat aside, they've done a really good job of quietly rebuilding. And what I mean by quietly is no OBJs, no Cooper Kupp, no Jalen Ramsey. Like, got rid of a lot of big name guys that they were known for. And all the Ram fans like, oh, we have this guy and we have this guy. And you're like, if you go through their depth chart now, there's a lot of names that you don't even know. But again, you do have Garoppolo behind Stafford, which is, I don't know. I don't. Garoppolo's never really thrilled me. I think he was Brady's backup, and then he went and he's been okay, but he's another guy like, that gets traded a lot, right? Why do guys like this get traded a lot if they're so good and you just can't, and he's not a starter, right? So you bring him in as the second guy. But the Rams have always been good at that, picking up some guys that they could use. But again, they rebuilt this team, you know, and I don't know how they do it, but every guy they put at running back turns out to be a Heisman Trophy winner. They're like MVP caliber guys, whoever they put, which means their offensive line is good and their scheme is good. So you got Kyron Williams. Now you have Blake Corum back there. It's going to be great. You have Puka Nacua, who catches everything and anything thrown anywhere near him. The kid is amazing. And then you have Devontae Adams, another guy who hopefully he's over the Aaron Rodgers affair and can actually play the game as well as he can. And again, he'll have a good guy throwing it to him if it's Stafford. But, and Tutu Atwell, and they have Tyler Higbee. So not real big. I wouldn't say these are all fantasy football names, but they've been able to also rebuild their offensive line with even some guys who have retired, but they put Havenstein and Dotson and Shelton, and they're just really, really solid. And if you look at the defense, again, they lost some big names. They lost Ramsey. They lost the linebacker that they brought over from San Francisco. What's his name? Or World linebacker Wagner. They lost a couple of guys here, but they managed to rebuild this team very quietly. And again, not through any big signings, but you wind up with a Troy Reader. You wind up with guys like that can play. Darius Williams. Just real, again, solid players. And we know that they have one of the best coaching staffs in the league. McVay is a genius, and he deserves all the credit that they give him. And they're just, they play in a tough place to play because the crowd's back now. They're actually Rams fans in the Ram building, not like when you go to a San Diego game. Not when they can go to a Chargers game. So it's a tougher place to play. Again, really good coaching. So I think they're easily division winners, favorites. But I get worried when I hear that Stafford's got a bad back, because that could derail the whole thing. Because I'm not 1,000% sold on Jimmy Garoppolo, because he'd still be in San Francisco, or he'd still be in New England, or he'd still be wherever else he's been if he was really that good. And I think he's like a, Trey Lance type of guy, or the other guy that years and years ago went to went from Green Bay to Seattle and never played because Russell Wilson walked in and took his job out of
Matt Flynn.
Wisconsin. Yeah,
Matt Flynn.
yeah, Matt Flynn. So, you wonder about some of these guys, right? I mean, Jay, we've always done that, right? We always go,
Yeah.
well, what happened? I thought this guy was so great. Why is he getting traded 3 times? Like, what's the issue with him that he's not
What
so
don't
great?
we know about him?
Yeah, is there a locker room problem? Is there an issue with that? But they seem to really stick together. That I think McVay again does an excellent job. I have a little bit of insight into the team from my buddy actually works for the NFL now, doesn't work with the Rams anymore. But I think they're solid, and I think I would put them at the top of that list for that NFC West. And they've done it in a really, really smart way because they've had no draft choices for 10 years.
They
And
finally started getting them back last year, pretty
yeah, they
much.
finally had a
So
couple to do last year, and again, they seem to still know how to do it. They picked some good guys, and um, so I like that team for the West.
I'm going to
Um,
actually kind of pile on there for a second. The one thing I'm actually even more interested in is the absence of Cooper Cup
mhm,
going to Seattle, and kind of Devontae Adams and Cooper Cup are two totally different people. I know Cooper Cup, two totally different people. That's obvious, but
mhm,
they're two totally different styles. Cup
mhm.
has been a big play guy, but has been more of a possession guy. Adams is pretty much a 15 to 20 yards down the field, no questions asked. And that's something I'm going to be very interested in, because when you find a wide receiver and trade him in division, and you
Mhm.
have to see that wide receiver as long as they're healthy twice a year,
Mhm.
that puts the fear of God into you that you're going to get that revenge game. And I think that's something to look into when Seattle and the
Oh yeah,
Rams
that'll
play
be
each
that'll
other
be a
this
fun
year too.
matchup. Yeah, yeah. No,
Mhm.
that'll be a fun matchup, and if when they play in LA, the fans will be rooting for him. They'll still be calling his name, especially the first
Got him a
year.
Super Bowl.
Yeah,
Basically got him a Super Bowl with the
yeah.
way as they
No,
played in
especially the first
2021.
year back, right? He'll get the proper reception there
Mhm.
because they did love him, and again, very odd that he would leave. But I think the Rams are smart enough. They're the team that trades guys or lets guys go a year early instead of a year late. And I like that some of the changes because I didn't think, again, Bobby Wagner retired, but I think getting rid of Ramsey and those guys that were just troublemakers and just liked being in LA and that kind of stuff, they're kind of get past that a little bit. And the owner had to do what he did when he first got there, and he had to draft Jared Goff because he had to get a quarterback number one because he was building a new stadium, and he knew when the Super Bowl was coming, so he had to make the trade to get staff. They've had a lot of stuff forced on them, and now the NFL building is there and everybody's there, and so they had to do it, but I think they're getting away from it now, where they can just kind of go ahead and just be a good solid team.
And Super Bowl 61 is going to be in LA, so they got to get themselves ready to go again for a
Yep.
year from now.
Yep.
I'm going to go next because I kind of find it interesting. I just talked about Cooper Cup going to Seattle. Seattle has a new quarterback in Sam Darnold, and that's because the Minnesota Vikings did not want to keep Sam Darnold. It's very rare after a 15-2 season that you move on from your quarterback, but that is exactly what the Minnesota Vikings did. Actually, 14-3. I apologize, but 14-3, and then they lose in the opening round game to the Los Angeles Rams. So Darnold is now in Seattle. The backup for Minnesota last year in Daniel Jones ended up going to Indianapolis because he had a better chance to start there, and he might start there if Anthony
Exactly.
Richardson doesn't get healthy or if he just doesn't shape up. And now you put in JJ McCarthy. It's an interesting situation because of the injury that McCarthy had all last year. You're basically starting a rookie day one. Now he has experience in the Jim Harbaugh system. I know we can talk about that all day, but it's still a year one quarterback with a very, very talented team around him. You have wide receivers there in Justin Jefferson, in Jordan Addison, who might be suspended for a few games to begin this season. You have Aaron Jones at the running back spot. You have Hawkinson. You have an all-star team essentially all around the Vikings, except the quarterback position. That's kind of where they're a little bit weaker. And that's the team that is going to be led by a straight up rookie in McCarthy. Picked 10th last year, still is going to have his growing pains. No one knows how good he is going to be. He didn't take a single NFL rep outside of the beginning of the preseason last year. Potential first rounder, got a lot of promise, but for all of the expectations that the team gave them last year with Darnold, who didn't really get over the hump in that final game and in that playoff game, which is the reason why the Vikings were very quick to put Sam Darnold to the curb. They got Sam Howell from the Seahawks later that weekend, separate trade, I believe. So he is the backup. He has experience, but he's not accurate in any way, shape, or form. He's almost like Jameis Winston. He can easily give you 30 touchdowns. He can easily give you 30 interceptions. So Minnesota has a lot to do at the quarterback position. You don't want JJ McCarthy to miss any time because every week he gets more reps with the first team. He gets to throw the ball to Justin Jefferson. If you thought you could be inaccurate to Garrett Wilson, you could throw the ball 5 miles to the left and Justin Jefferson can still easily get it. That's how much his range is.
Right.
But with the team that's around Minnesota, offensively and defensively, with the coaching staff that's around in Minnesota, they didn't lose Brian Flores. They still have Kevin O'Connell as their head coach, a very, very good mind out of that whole Sean McVay tree. I'm very interested to see what the Vikings do this year. You screw up in this division because it is a dangerous division. The Lions are Super Bowl contenders. The Packers, if they get their stuff together, can easily be a Super Bowl contender. The Bears can be a playoff team if Caleb Williams shows like about 80% improvement that he did in year one, which he could do. But I'm very, very curious to see what's going to go on in Minnesota over these next 3 to 4 weeks through the preseason. And we'll see what happens. It's going to be a very interesting situation in Minnesota. I can't tell you what to expect from the Vikings this year. Maybe training camp will give me a little bit of clarity. All right.
Their weakness has always been the quarterback spot. I mean, the Kirk Cousins not throwing the ball to Jefferson, and in the playoff game they lost to the Giants, making a huge mistake. They get rid of him. They go to Darnold. He makes basically the same mistake towards the end of the year. So it's like they keep looking. They know how good they are, but they need that quarterback to step up and not be, the guy that doesn't take the shot to win them a game.
All right, let's head over to the AFC Norris division for our final two teams. And Anthony, the Cleveland Browns are just going to brown all of the time, and they have many situations going into the training camp.
You know what? When I asked you for a suggestion, I was like, okay, I don't want to pick the obvious teams like the Bills and the Chiefs. We know who they are. But you gave me the Cleveland Browns. I was like, okay, this is an interesting situation because of the quarterbacks, room. I had no idea so much would go so bad for this team. It just span of 4 days.
Browns are going to brown.
From the helmet reveal and the mascot falling into the water to kick things off. You have the quarterback room is literally it's like a game. It's like a contestant for a game show, and the winner basically gets a cameo appearance as a quarterback in the National Football League. You got Joe Flacco, who's going into year number 18. 2 years ago, he was the Cleveland Browns quarterback when they were a playoff team. Now, in that time, he helped them get to the playoffs. He also turned the ball over a heck of a lot. He's on a 1-year deal. So is Kenny Pickett. Both of those guys was actually splitting the reps among the first teamers. But Kenny Pickett suffers a hamstring injury, so now his ability to win that starting job is kind of up in the air. You gotta figure the Browns can't possibly keep 4 quarterbacks unless they're gonna put one on the practice squad. But then let's go down to move down the quarterback depth. You have Dylan Gabriel. Dylan Gabriel, who basically bounced around college and before finally settling into Oregon, and the Browns took him with the number 3 pick. He's played in a number of systems in college, but clearly he's playing for the at least the number 3 starting spot. Then you have Shedeur Sanders, who to his credit, has said all the right things, had the right attitude, has even told his dad, uh, by the way, get well soon, wish you all the best, Deion Sanders, to stay away from camp. And he's done everything the Kevin Stefanski and the coach staff has told him to do. Great attitude, great positive
Bad driver.
behavior. Yes,
Bad driver.
and a very
Must
bad
be late
job.
Oh
to
That we keep him,
practice a lot. Yeah.
and yes, yes, and we had to keep him behind the steering wheel. And now you have the Browns taking a bit of a hit in the defensive backfield. They losing Martin Emerson Jr. for the season. He tore his Achilles in practice. So now that hurts the defensive backfield. When you ever have Pro Bowl and Denzel Ward, now they have to figure out who's going to be a number two corner situation. The wide receiver situation is kind of up in the air because outside Jerry Judy, there really isn't a proven wide receiver. So there's a competition battle for number two. And then you look at the rest of this depth chart. You got a good tight end, David Njoku. That defense, I mean, that defensive line, when you think of Myles Garrett and you put Mason Graham on that same line, it's going to be really good. But it just seems like the Browns can't get out of their own way to become a respectable football team because all this is happening. The owner of all things, the owner comes out publicly and throws his own general manager under the bus. Jimmy Haslam just basically comes out and said, "Oh yeah, it wasn't my idea to draft Shador Sanders. It was definitely our general manager, Andrew Berry, who idea to do it." And now you have this leak that the Browns kind of have a couple of step-by-step plans to get Arch Manning, who was still in college, by the way, and you still have four other quarterbacks battling to be the number one quarterback for this season. So, I don't, I can see why, man, Rabbi, you and I are wrestling fans. We know the Mike the Miz of WWE is a diehard Cleveland Brand fan. He's an Ohio native. His reaction on that plane to one of the draft picks was my reaction this week. Like, how can this possibly be a respectable NFL team when they just keep doing things such as make you scratch your head? And when you take away the circus on paper, this could actually be a decent, solid football team that can make the run out of wild card spot because that defense I expect to be really good. If they can figure out the quarterback situation, I would think it'd be Joe Flacco because he has the most experience and has the arm and was the quarterback to that team making the playoffs 2 years ago. They can make them out. They have an outside chance of being a wild card team in the AFC. But when the circus is around, and all the noises there, it kind of just drowns everything out. So the Browns is going to be an interesting team to watch just because of the quarterback situation, because of the owner being a distraction on a Jerry Jones level, and the fact that
Jerry Jones level.
Okay, I stopped my Jerry Jones level.
Jimmy Haslam is on like the Woody Johnson level, okay?
Of idiocy, yes.
And the thing is, and when you sum all this up, this has just been 1 week. 1 week. And they just started using pads and they still got joint practices to deal with. So just fasten your seatbelt. If they can get to opening week, it'll be a minor miracle because of everything that's going wrong in the last 72 hours since I text Rabbi after seeing a movie to give me an idea of who should I talk about this week. So, you know what? While we're in the AFC North, I'm going to set you up, Jay, because they're old divisional rivals, the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've been kind of going through some changes. There's still a bromance developing in the Steel City, if I'm not mistaken.
We'll see. And even if, and thank you for that setup, Anthony, I'm still kind of processing the fact that you used the phrase Browns and respectable football team in the same sentence. So give me a second here to process that. Even if you don't bleed black and gold like I do, with all of the big changes to their roster, signing quarterback Aaron Rodgers and cornerback Darius Slay, making trades to bring in wide receiver DK Metcalf and defensive back Jalen Ramsey and tight end Jonnu Smith, and sending out wide receiver George Pickens and free safety Minkah Fitzpatrick, along with a solid draft class led by Oregon defensive tackle Derek Harmon, who's expected to line up next to outside linebacker TJ Watt, who finally got his contract situation sorted. This year's training camp at St. Vincent College in Latrobe, PA was going to be intriguing for the Steelers. Rodgers is obviously the number one storyline. How much does he have left at almost 42 years old? Most of the over 40 quarterback crowd hasn't come close to Brady level play. How will he fit into the Steelers offense? How will offensive coordinator Arthur Smith adjust his run first offense? Last year, only 3 teams ran the ball more frequently than Pittsburgh. Well, how will he pair that with the West Coast offense? Rodgers, who attempted the second most passes in the league last year, has run for most of his career. Metcalf could be an interesting schematic fit with Rodgers, who's often favored precise route runners over big play deep ball weapons. They started the process of building the chemistry needed to be a successful pitch and catch tandem on day one of training camp, as Rodgers targeted Metcalf early and often in both 11-on-11 and 7-on-7 periods, and then in his first 2 plays of 7 shots on day 2. Now, Mike Tomlin did an interesting and very Tomlin-esque thing to help the burgeoning chemistry between Rodgers and Metcalf, and that was to have them share a suite in the dorm so they can continue talking and getting to know each other's tendencies, preferences, etc. when it comes to the passing game, even after practice ends for that day. Tomlin has historically used the part of training camp that happens in Latrobe as a prime opportunity to build relationships, team chemistry, and capture, quote, what cannot be measured. Part of that will hinge on Tomlin's ability to get Rodgers back to being a football player again, keeping the main thing, to use another Tomlinism, and leaving all the off-field noise that accompanied Rodgers' time with the Jets in the rear view. Tomlin does not suffer fools easily. He wants volunteers, not hostages, and will not look kindly if any of that noise follows Rodgers to Pittsburgh. So far, Rodgers, who wants to end his career with a better taste in his mouth after the mess that was his Jets tenure, seems to have come to camp with the right attitude. Metcalf has said that Rodgers has been able to communicate effectively with all of his new teammates, from long-tenured vets to new kids trying to make the team, making fun of those young kids and being a commanding presence in the huddle. Rookie quarterback Will Howard has said that Rodgers, quote, just looks happy to be around his teammates. As for the on-field things to watch, start with age and mobility. In terms of age, before Tom Brady, no quarterback age 41 or older started multiple games in a season until Warren Moon started 14 games for the Seahawks in 97 at age 41 and earned his 9th Pro Bowl selection. On the mobility front, is Rodgers finally past the lingering effects of the torn Achilles in 2023 and the reported knee and hamstring issues that severely reduced his mobility and ability to evade opposing pass rushers and led him to being the 9th most sacked quarterback in the NFL last season with 40, and resulted in just the 4th season of his career where he had a negative EPA per dropback against the blitz, negative 0.19, which was the worst mark among starting quarterbacks who attempted at least 300 passes per True Media. His overall EPA per dropback last season was also negative 0.02, and his passer rating was a career low 90.5. If he's not able to evade pass rushers due to his advanced age and his mobility being limited, that's going to put a lot of pressure on a remade Steelers offensive line, which will be bookended by 2023 first-rounder Broderick Jones, who is transitioning to left tackle after spending his first 2 seasons at right tackle, where he allowed the 2nd most sacks in the NFL last year, 11 per Pro Football Focus, and 2024 first-rounder Troy Fautanu, who basically missed his entire rookie season due to a knee injury he suffered in Week 2. He's going to step in at right tackle. With all of that being a cause for concern, there is a reason for some optimism, and that's that Rodgers has thrived in a West Coast offense which is often predicated on quick, precise passes thrown with timing and anticipation. Now, last year, Rodgers' 6.9 air yards per attempt was the 2nd lowest mark of his career, but the Steelers will likely lean into a quick passing game as well as continuing their heavy use of run game and play action to protect their quarterback from the rush and get the ball into the hands of their playmakers like DK Metcalf as soon as possible. Granted, this is all predicated on Rodgers and all of his pass catchers being on the same page with how each branch of the route tree should be run. Early in camp, Rodgers has been seen talking to his wide receivers, like second-year pro Roman Wilson, about this very thing. Now, if they can achieve that by end of camp, the Steelers' offense may be good enough to win games. Ramsey is the number 2 storyline. How will the 7-time Pro Bowler fit into this new-look secondary that also includes 6-time Pro Bowler Slay? I don't think it'll be an issue as A, Tomlin calls Ramsey, quote, a football player first and a positional player second, and 2, the Steelers were in their sub packages about 80% of the time overall last season, so both will likely spend plenty of time on the field together, especially in the 2 games against the pass-happy Bengals, when the Steelers were in their base about 5 to 7 plays per game. In those scenarios, I can see Ramsey in the slot, Joey Porter and Darius Slay on the outside with Deshaun Elliott at strong safety and Juan Thornhill at free safety. Now, Ramsey echoed Tomlin's statement regarding his role, saying, quote, I just want to play football. I don't care where I'm at, corner, safety, slot. At the same time, I don't think I'm getting paid what I'm getting paid not to be in a position to affect the game. Now, what'll be interesting is how this will play out when the opposing scenario occurs with the 2 games against the Ravens, whose run-heavy offense and heavy personnel groupings forced Pittsburgh to play its base defense about 20 to 25 plays per game last year. In that scenario, will the Steelers move Ramsey to free safety and keep Slay as the outside cornerback as a way to keep their best defensive backs on the field together, or they move Ramsey to outside cornerback when in base to manage the workload of the 34-year-old Slay? So far, in early 11 on 11 and 7 shots period, Ramsey's been in the slot with Porter and Slay on the outside, with Elliott at the strong safety, Thornhill, and Thornhill when the first defense was in nickel at free safety. When the first team defense shifted to base, Thornhill sat and Ramsey was deployed much like Micah Fitzpatrick used to be, patrolling the deep middle as the free safety with Elliott at the strong safety, Porter and Slay as the cornerbacks. So far, it seems that no matter where Ramsey is listed on the depth chart, he'll be used all over the field in a variety of ways, from following slot wide receivers and tight ends in motion, dropping into an underneath zone, blitzing off the edge. His versatility, he can be used as the middle runner in the Steelers version of Tampa 2, or he can be used as either the post safety or the half-field safety in other coverages. This is going to allow Steelers defensive coordinator Terrell Austin to disguise his zone schemes and potentially play more man coverage. Ramsey's physicality will also allow the Steelers to play him at nickel even against run-fit scenarios. All of this, theoretically, puts the Steelers' defense in a better position against both of their key AFC North rivals. So if both of these guys play to the potential that's being envisioned, Steelers should be improved, and maybe they'll actually break Tomlin's 8-year slide of not winning a playoff game. We'll see.
But the thing is, and it's curious to me, that this is actually going to be an interesting referendum on the Jets this year, just because of 2 things. Number 1, Aaron Rodgers was not terrible last year for the Jets.
No!
He wasn't good, but he wasn't terrible.
It's the best numbers put up by a quarterback in, what did we say, 20 years?
But it is the Jets. And
yeah, granted, it's a low bar. I understand.
It's a very low bar. And one thing that's going to be interesting to me, and you guys could weigh in here, is what is the end goal, do you think, of an of this season for Pittsburgh? Just because of the fact that it's been said a lot of times, the Steelers have a Ravens problem really in the division, as seen last year.
Yes.
And does someone like Aaron Rodgers just put this team over the hump? I don't know if you would think that, but
here's my take on that, and I agree with you 100%. And I think there's one thing that Rodgers will do that I constantly was annoyed that Russell Wilson would not do. Rodgers doesn't have a problem using the entire field. Wilson, if you look at his heat maps, he is predominantly an outside the numbers kind of guy. He is almost pathologically, paranoidally averse to using the middle of the field. And that made the Steelers' offense predictable. You can design coverages to take away the outside if you know that Wilson has an issue throwing over the middle. Steelers got big plays when he did because teams knew he wasn't likely to do it. Rodgers doesn't have a problem in that regard. The question is does he have enough leg strength to throw the deep ball, to make use of Metcalf's big play ability? We know he's not going to have a problem using the middle of the field, Wilson on slant, getting the ball to Freiermuth over the middle of the field, and using the Steelers running backs in the passing game. So I think the Steelers offense, at least in the passing game, will be less predictable because Rodgers doesn't really have those type of tendencies where he ignores part of the field. In terms of being able to man up against the rushing attack of the Ravens, hopefully the fact that they've increased the defensive front, not just with Harmon, but I mean Hayward's back, and they've kind of gotten some depth there, and guys coming back from injury. Adding Slay and adding Ramsey gives them a lot more options in coverage. I think the defense, at least on paper, is improved. Do I still think the Ravens are the class of the division? Yeah, until somebody proves otherwise. Yeah, the AFC North goes through Baltimore. It's a question of, do the Steelers have enough to stave off the Bengals from overtaking them, or is this, one of those years where the AFC North sends 3 teams to the playoffs? Both of scenarios have happened.
Joe, do you have any final thoughts on this? Because we're going to let you go right after this. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about this topic.
No, first of all, I don't think Aaron's really married, by the way.
I can see that. I can honestly see that.
Yeah, I can think he's just screwing with everybody. But I think the question that you asked was, what's the goal here? Is so if you get to win 10 games, which Tomlin always does under Aaron Rodgers, and you get to a playoff game, is he coming back for the next 2 years? What is the goal here? Because if you win 10 or 11 games, your draft pick is 30, is 24 instead of 3. So, if you're going to put him in here, do you really think he's the answer that's going to get you over the top in the division, get you over the top past the Chiefs, get you past,
No.
And is that not supposed to be the goal all along? But I also think that even though, again, because he threw the ball 1,000 times last year, some of his stats got skewed a little bit, right? I understand
a little.
I think yardage sounds great, but when the guy's throwing 50 passes a game, which he shouldn't have been doing, of course you're going to get a lot of yards, right? And they lost those games. So, you and I agree on a lot of stuff, Jay. You're more of a stats person. I'm more of a feel person.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of look at those things and go, yeah, I could find some stats that make almost everybody look good or bad.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
And I think that in his case, some of his weaknesses are that he's not the same guy, but in his mind, he hasn't adjusted to that. Because the bad balls that he threw last year that were intercepted were the little flip passes that he used to be able to backpedal and throw, and those are awful at this point. He can't do that. And even like you say, is he over? You ask if he's over the Achilles injury to still run the ball, but if you remember, 2 years even before that, he stopped running. In Green Bay, he stopped running. That playoff game that he could have gotten the first down, he has stopped running the ball because he wants to preserve himself a little bit. And
I don't expect the Steelers will utilize it or have any thought of using him in the run game because they fully recognize he's not Justin Fields. He's not even Russell Wilson. So
I'm just saying his escapability, is only going to get
escapability. That's the big question, especially since you got 2 tackles, one who's going from one side to the other and one who's yet to really play much in the NFL. It's going to be an interesting situation.
But I think your coaching staff is, and again, to Rabbi's point, your coaching staff is better than a Jets coaching staff that if they had 2 rookies on the offensive line, you might as well just mail the game in because he's going to just get hammered all night long, which is exactly what happened to him. I think in certain games, I think that's the thing that you have is you're going to bring some good guys along. The problem that I look at it as, I think the question Rabbi asked was, so what's the goal here? So if you get to develop this offensive line to be really good, who are they blocking for next year?
And that's the thing. As
you don't have a backup that's sitting there waiting to take that spot, right? You don't have a high draft pick that's now sitting there going, hey, I get to sit behind Aaron Rodgers, right?
No, I don't think Will Howard. I think does he have potential? Sure, but it's hard to tell. And Mason Rudolph, Yeah, is he essentially what you're doing is you're putting the Mason Rudolph bridge year off by a year, maybe two, because I don't see Rodgers. I tell you this, I don't see him playing
Bridge.
two more years, 2 years max, because I just don't see him sticking around. So I think if you're a Steelers fan, realistically, what you'd like to do is you'd like to get past the first round of the playoffs finally. I don't think anybody who's under anybody who thinks that Rodgers still has enough in the tank to get them past the trio of Baltimore, Buffalo, and Kansas City, they need to put down whatever they're smoking.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, and again, I think you're you're obviously very passionate about your team and you understand a lot, but you're also realistic. It's like
Yes,
they're not going to win the Super Bowl in the next 2 years.
no.
And so that's why my question is, if you're going to put yourself in a position, it's almost like being in the NBA and winning 35 games. It's like the worst thing you can do, right? Because you draft 22,
Right.
a guy that nobody's ever heard of before that won't be playing. He'll be sitting on the bench, and then what do? You're stuck in that dead zone for all that time.
Yeah, unless you get lucky and the Jackson Dart scenario falls into your lap come April.
Yeah, no, I get
Wow.
it. I'm like, if there's 7 quarterbacks there, you get a chance. But
Right.
Again, and you don't know. I think what people don't understand sometimes too, you don't know. There might be something they're looking at that they say, hey, in 2 years, that draft class is unbelievable. Because these guys now are coaching, are scouting guys in high school and freshmen that aren't playing and they're, all this other stuff. So I give them a lot of credit, and I think that they'll keep their streak alive of winning some games. But I'm just wondering, to Rabo's point, like, what's the goal here? Is it just to try to beat Baltimore at this point, and then whatever happens after that?
I think a lot of Steelers fans
happy?
would settle for that, Joe.
Yeah.
It's
No,
gonna-
hey, I get it. Hey, I just want to beat the friggin' Cowboys once. Like, I'm happy.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah. But, you kind of just say, okay, where is that future going to come from
Right.
if you consistently do this?
Yeah.
Because you're going to lose guys like Metcalf even and stuff. It's just tough. So
There's just, for the first time, I think, since the middle of the Big Ben era,
Mhm.
I think these Steelers are hella intriguing, which is a lot different than what I can say over the last few years as an outsider to
Yep.
seeing that. Like, I'm really interested to see when the Steelers play the Jets opening weekend. I think there's no more anticipated matchup from my view than
Nope.
that matchup.
Yep.
So just hope that opening Monday night, it doesn't start with Aaron Rodgers laying on the ground.
That would be a Sunday
I'll tell you
afternoon
this,
game.
I'll tell you this, Joe. If that happens, I'll take Mason Rudolph over Zach Wilson every day of the week,
Yeah.
and twice on Sunday and even Monday night.
There you go. That's true. You do have a little bit of an advantage there.
Sunday afternoon one game, but whatever.
Oh, there
you go.
Just doing that. All right, we're done with the NFL for tonight. Joe, we're gonna let you go. Thank you for being with us
Joseph, always
this
a pleasure.
evening. I will
Mhm.
see you on Monday for the first of 2 official review podcasts that we're going to have in the preseason. And we'll be doing it again every Monday, starting in the regular season. Thank you, Joseph.
See you guys. Always a pleasure.
Hey.
See you, Joe.
Have a good night.
All right, as we get ready, we're done with the NFL tonight, but as the band Queen once said, the show must go on. So it's time for tonight's closer and final rant. All right, as we reach the dog days of August, when we talked about ridiculously hot weather and a mix of NFL training camp and preseason NFL that means nothing to the common man, I've come here to give you a PSA about the WNBA. I'm not 100% sure this is the way I wanted to mention this on the show for the first time this year, but hey, if I don't have to say the name Caitlin Clark in a rant about the WNBA, I am all for it. So as the WNBA All-Stars were practicing before the All-Star game, all the players, including Caitlin Clark, knew that was coming, despite Clark being inactive, wore shirts that said, "Pay us what you owe us." This was a response to a bargaining session the Thursday before All-Star Weekend with over 40 players and Kathy Engelbert, WNBA commissioner, meeting, and absolutely nothing happening. As the WNBA opted out of the last iteration of the collective bargaining agreement, the goal is to get it done by October. That's to effectively get an expansion draft as the new Portland and Toronto teams are coming in next season. The goal was progress. The result was, again, nothing. What do you expect when a proposal from the union was delivered in February and doesn't get answered back from the league until June? Now the question with what's on the shirt, the words, pay us what you owe us. What does that mean? To the simpleton listening, that's you, and reacting probably right now at what I'm saying, it means, why would we give a raise to a league that lost $10 million in 2018, according to Adam Silver? And it ended up going to $40 million lost allegedly last year. Listen, the $40 million was due to new expenses like chartered flights, because, you should have chartered flights if you're playing in a professional sports league, sorry, and a very unfriendly media rights deal that will look a lot friendlier 2 years from now when the new deal kicks in. Please note, though, that $40 million are WNBA numbers. It may not be $40 million of a loss. You believe the league lost that much last year? I'm going to teach you a word. Get up close to your screens. Negotiation. There, I even put it in 5 syllables for you. Just because the NBA is a sport that generated a ton more money, and that was $10 billion last year, this is an established sport. Note, the NBA has been around for years. WNBA has only been around since 1997. There's a lot of cachet that the NBA has, but the WNBA is essentially built off the back of the NBA. However, the max a WNBA player makes is a shade under $250,000. Max. The minimum of an NBA player makes is $1.27 million. There is no league, no sport where the inequality should be that much between the minimum of one gender and the maximum of one gender and the minimum of another. Let's talk revenue of what you might think is a fledgling sport. That's $226 million revenue last year and $500 million this year. Now, the teams are making a bunch of money. May I add to you that the Golden State Valkyries are about to bring in $75 million during their inaugural season. And the New York Liberty, due to minor acquisition from stakeholders, are valued at $450 million. Oh, yeah. And did you see that little expansion fee of about $250 million for the 3 new teams added in Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia? The average franchise in the WNBA is $269 million. Do you think we saw that pre-pandemic? Shake your head no. Thank you. Okay, now I have a final math problem. Don't worry, you won't be tested. Let's take that $500 million. Let's give the players 50% of that. Reasonable, right? It is. Don't answer. Rhetorical question. Divided between the 168 players on 15 teams, which will be what they have in 2026, and the average player salary will be $1.49 million. By the way, 10 times the league's current average salary. And one thing that the owners were wanting is full commitment from WNBA players not to always do overseas before the beginning of the year and going back. Remember, I said before that the lowest paid NBA player is $1.27 million. So all of this just seems a lot more reasonable than shut up and dribble. We started a few years ago treating WNBA players like actually they're worth something. It didn't need to take Caitlin Clark. Damn it. Now it's time. It's not always obligated, but now it's time to show that the worth is closer to being a star. WNBA, pay them what you owe them. Go ahead, guys.
And let me jump in here because
go
I'm
ahead.
Numbers, and you can give the emotional response because I know you are more emotionally invested in the WNBA than I have been of late. So, to kind of dovetail and piggyback on what Rabbi said, the league has capitalized on the Caitlin Clark effect, which has caused a ridiculous spike in viewership, up 23% year over year, attendance up 26%, which has resulted in a need to move certain marquee matchups into larger, aka NBA arenas, and merchandise sales up 40%. When you add in revenue from media rights, expansion fees, and other avenues, money is finally coming into the W, and the players rightly believe they're owed more of that money than they're currently getting. Now, I agree 100% that creating a business model that allows them to share in the league's growth and directs more of that revenue from that growth towards salary should be the number one thing on their new CBA to-do list, with the current CBA set to expire on Halloween. Look, I get it. For most of the WNBA's existence, as Rabbi said, they began playing in 97. The league and the teams combined have not been profitable, but that is very likely to change, especially once the new media rights deal kicks in next year, which will have ESPN, Disney, Amazon, and NBC shelling out a combined $200 million per season for 11 years. And since the new deals leave room for the league to bring in additional partners, there's a chance that once it's all said and done, this new deal could be worth as much as 6 times the current media rights fee. This means the WNBA could theoretically be profitable come as early as 2026, though we'll have a better idea once the new CBA happens. Look, when you consider the increase in franchise valuations, as Rabbi said, New York, the Liberty raised capital from a group of investors that, to the tune of $450 million. Those expansion fees. Think about this, Rabbi, as you said, above $250 million for Cleveland, Detroit, and Philly. You know what the Valkyries had to pay for their expansion fee? $50 million. It's no surprise the players feel that with the revenue pie getting larger, they're entitled to a larger piece, and they have not been shy about their desire for an increase in salaries. As Rabbi said, the max around $250,000 and a revenue, and they also want a revenue sharing system that does not have a fixed component. That's a big sticking point in the current CBA negotiations, as unlike their NBA brethren, where the basketball related income, BRI, is split about 50-50 between the players and the owners and is used to determine the annual salary cap, the W doesn't explicitly use BRI to determine its salary cap. The current CBA sets the cap for each season and increases at a fixed rate of 3% per year. From what I've read, the league does have an additional mechanism for revenue sharing if certain marks are reached, but that mechanism is from a CBA that was created in 2020 when the WNBA played in a bubble due to the pandemic and essentially made no money. Thus, the current structure has prevented the WNBA from catching up with the huge growth spurt that they've experienced over these last 2 years and has prevented the players from benefiting from the aforementioned spike in financial gains. Look, both sides seem to recognize that things need to change. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert saying on All-Star Saturday that, quote, I think you'll see the revenue sharing be much more lucrative one as we go forward because we're in a better place. We want to significantly increase their salary and benefits while balancing with our owners, their ability to have a path to profitability as well as continued investment. You see tens of millions of dollars being invested in practice facilities and other player experiences by teams. We want to strike the right balance between those two so that can continue. And Seattle Storm forward Neku Okogumake, who is the president of the Players Union, saying, quote, we see the growth in the league as it stands. Current salary system is not really paying us what we're owed. We want to be able to have that fair share moving forward, especially as we see all of the investment going in and want to be able to have our salaries be reflected in a structure that makes sense for us. Liberty guard Natasha Cloud, who's a 9-year vet, probably put it best, though not as diplomatically as her union president did, saying, quote, we're going to continue to push for everything that we've earned. That word earned is something that needs to be highlighted. I think a lot of times you get told to just continue to take crumbs and be thankful for what we have, and that's just not the case anymore. To borrow a line from Star Trek, the WNBA is about to boldly go where no American women's professional sports league has gone before. Time will tell how bumpy the ride will be before they reach their destination.
Yeah. By the way, to tackle on what you said about the media rights deal, Ion TV actually have a separate media rights deal with the
Right.
WNBA to broadcast games from Friday nights. So that's another avenue as far as revenue. But here's the thing, from the reactions I see on social media, and obviously you saw the male chauvinists of the world kind of come out, show their ugly heads. It lets me know that there was a lot of people on social media that was very happy with getting pizza parties from the bosses instead of getting a raise every so often. But when you think about that, it reminded me a little bit about Team USA's women's soccer, and when they were fighting 6 years ago for equal pay, when they were winning their tournaments and winning their matches. Meanwhile, the guys would just get paid ransomly more just for showing up, and obviously they went through the same thing as far as the pushback from the misogynistic point of views of the world. But listen, when you look at the fact that everyone talked about Caitlin Clark as the golden goose egg, and the media darling and the one that's brought out the eyes to the WNBA, at least in the last 2 seasons, she's getting $78,000 on her rookie salary. I mean,
Yeah.
come on. She makes
Yeah.
that in an hour just from endorsement deals. I mean,
Right.
Angel Reese makes less than that, and she literally made the most money the last 3 seasons as far as NIL deals of any college athlete, male or female. And you mentioned that the highest paid the highest paid salary is over $249,000. Here's the thing: the players are only getting 9.3% of the league's total revenue. That is very embarrassing when you think about this economic boom that the league has had. Now, look, I've been a long time New York Liberty fan, WNBA. Go back to the very beginning. The Liberty has always been my favorite team. And I just remember going to Madison Square Garden when they were playing there. And honestly, the WNBA definitely had some lean years when financially they were in a lot of trouble. You saw the Liberty playing, playing in Westchester, pretty much, and you saw teams relocate and basically these operations. I mean, we have literally a 3-time dynasty champion in the Houston Comets that no longer exists,
Yes. Yeah.
which says a lot. You have the Dallas Wings, who was formerly the Detroit Shock, who were WNBA champions at one point. Becky Hammond made her career with the Liberty, and the San Antonio Superstars was no longer exist. That just tells you how much this league has gone up and down as far as finances. You've seen teams literally cease operations. You see teams fold. You see teams relocate multiple times to stay afloat. And yes, there have been cases where the league just lost money, especially the late 2010s when you saw you saw the players wearing basically advertisements
Yeah.
on their jerseys instead of the team name and logo, which I just thought was such a low point for what was for a league that started out with such promise and such enthusiasm. And now you see the last couple of years, people starting to get reinvested in the WNBA again. And yes, Caitlin Clark um has brought a lot of attention to the league as well because she's a phenomenal player, but she's also has brought a level of intrigue, fascination to people who really didn't follow the league.
Right.
They say, okay, they see Caitlin Clark. They see it, you see the fever with so many nationally televised games, it's hard to miss them. The WNBA built the All-Star game, the All-Star weekend in Indianapolis around Caitlin Clark's celebrity status.
Yeah.
And you saw how she interacted with all the other players so that it killed this this bogus notion that everyone in the league is out to get her. She's out partying with her teammates, literally on live stream and just having a blast because it's like, yes, they're there to have fun. Yes, let's Candace Parker. The All-Star game is fun. Like game 7 of the finals, all right? Let's just put that out there. There were 4-point lines out there for charity for a reason. But the thing is, too, is that, yes, they're finally getting some respect. It's time to start paying these players what they own. You don't allow, look, you can't get mad at players going to play in Unrivaled to make extra money or going overseas to make extra money. Heaven forbid we have another situation what happened with Brittany Griner, which could be easily avoided if you pay these players what they are, so they don't have to take on supplements.
They'd rather stay home.
Yeah, take on a supplement income to play elsewhere. I remember the early years of the NFL and even the NBA when players had to take secondary jobs to supplement income until they started getting paid. They didn't have to work a third job. They didn't have to work at a supermarket to make ends meet because they were getting paid like crap in a professional sport. This is the things that we want to get away from. Like, look, that the players, they're the ones bringing the money in. You see that the Las Vegas Aces, the first WNBA team to sell out season tickets in back-to-back years. The Valkyrie have literally led the league in attendance this season. Because they have brought a great enthusiasm. You have games being moved out of smaller venues to NBA venues like it's nothing. I've been to Chicago multiple times. I never seen the Winchester Arena sell more than 4,000 tickets. Yes, people. Angel Reese is a popular athlete, even whether you like her or not. She is very popular, and young girls like look up to her. There's a reason why she is in the top 10 as far as jersey sales. There's a reason why you have Sabrina Ionescu having a night dedicated to her, like last Saturday night against the Sparks, a game I did attend, by the way. Well, they celebrated her unveiling her new sneakers from Nike. There's a reason why Asia Wilson sneakers sold out within an hour of going on sale. And don't believe Bam Ball, he had those dibs on sneakers, okay?
I think he has the right too.
And
yeah.
let's not forget about the impact Paige Beckers is making on the league as well.
Yes, and Paige Beckers, by the way, if you want an example of what the tutors of Gina Auriemma is, look at Brianna Stewart, look at Diana Taurasi, look at Paige Beckers, look at the discipline, look at Sue Bird. You want to know about the legacy of Pat Summitt, you got Candace Parker right there. I know she hasn't been everyone's favorite the last 48 hours, but yes, that's not going to take away from her all-time status. I challenge people to look up Cynthia Cooper, Tina Thompson, Cheryl Swoops, Becky Hammond, Tamika Catchers, Tamika Holtzclaw, Maya Moore, for Christ's sake, Rebecca Lobo, Teresa Weatherspoon. Look at all these great players that came before Caitlin Clark, and I'm not taking nothing away from Caitlin Clark. She is an amazing player. She's fun to watch. She was fun to watch in college. I know this has been a tough year because she has struggled. She's had the injuries, but I think she's going to be an amazing player and an ambassador for the WNBA for years to come. She is the torchbearer as far as what the future is going to bring to this league. But I think it's a disservice to give all the credit to her and not think of the sides who took over leadership, took over the ownership of New York Liberty, moved them back to the five boroughs where their fan base was, moved them to Brooklyn. They were the ones that actually took a fine because it's like, look, we're putting our players on charter flights, okay? We're not going to have our players sitting in commercial and possibly being exposed to who knows what. Or having the players harassed by some schmuck who want a social media moment. Like I think it's unfair to give a young 23-year-old player who's still Kim Clark's still 23. We're forgetting all of this, and she has handled herself as mature as it gets when you have the world of your shoulders, and she's publicly admitted to talking to the team therapist. So yes, she has admitted that this is taking a toll on her physically and mentally.
I think
it would any 23-year-old. But I'm gonna wrap up my thoughts here. But I think as a whole, the WNBA is going in the right direction. It's time to reward the very workhorses that has taken the court, past, present, and even now in the future, to reward them for what they were for maintaining and even inspiring to now when you're in a position where we can look at the WNBA as an equal. The first time I've ever seen the WNBA lead off Sports Center, it's been the last 2 years, where you had this amazing regular season, one of the most memorable WNBA finals we've seen between the Liberty and the Lynx. The first to have multiple overtimes, no less. And tonight we had a finals rematch of that very game, lead on Sports Center, on a day where you had the training deadline, this NFL training camp, and we talked about the Hall of Fame game being in 24 hours. And we're going to have the NBA in a couple of months too. So to see that and knowing, being that kid that was able to go to a game at Madison Square Garden in the first season of existence, the New York Liberty, and to see what the league is now, that makes me proud because I have, Jay, you have nieces, we're both uncles.
Yep.
to see them get inspired
Yep.
and see younger generations. I think it's in a great direction, but to maintain that, reward the players for what they have been able to do over the last 30 plus years, and especially the last few to now, the league have interest and people are now more invested than ever in women's sports.
Amen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Greatly said. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how these negotiations continue through. By the way, Ion makes just extended their deal recently, going back to way like 15 minutes ago. Ion Ricks extended the deal recently. It was a 3-year, $13 million deal originally. They extended it. We don't know exactly how much it is now, but that's just to kind of follow up on that. Also, by the way, the Aces did become San Antonio, so technically they did fold, but they did
Yeah, and
just
it's another
technically move.
relocation
It is a
situation.
relocation, but it wasn't a move in a new team. But Becky Hammond decided to go to both parts of it. So anyway, for Jay Kaplan, Anthony Strait, and Joe Tufaro, I am Stephen Rabinowitz, and I want to rest straight the rumors. I did not throw anything on the court during last night's Golden State Valkyries Atlanta Dream game. Look it up. That was not me. That was not me at all. I was here. I have an alibi. So don't mind me. YouTube.com/on the sports lines on demand. Facebook.com/on the sports lines live. And Jay, social door number 3, what's behind it?
Our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sports Lines, where you'll find a link to each new show, including tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from older sports that we think are worth your time to check out. Barely a day after the Hall of Fame class of 2025 was enshrined, the class of 2005 lost a member as legendary Cubs second baseman Ryne Sandberg passed away Monday night. On Tuesday morning, I posted a link to a story by The Athletic's John Greenberg that serves as a beautiful eulogy and tells us why the Hall of Fame chairperson Jane Forbes Clark referenced Rhino's induction speech from '05 this past weekend in Cooperstown, and why Rhino's loss will be felt well beyond the friendly confines of Wrigley Field. The piece is very well written, and the read is worth your time.
All right, we'll see you next time for some baseball talk. Mets getting every arm in the book. The Yankees getting Ryan McMahon. The Mariners just getting Eugenio Suarez as we are talking, by the way, during this show. So a lot to talk about during baseball as their trade deadline comes up tomorrow and as they go down the home stretch. Until then, good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.